This is the Weigh-In Podcast by Benoit Chestnut. And on today's episode, well, originally we were going to talk about a totally different topic. And then we got the question, does Jiu-Jitsu help with wrestling? And I kind of figured that was not something I should answer just in a short little, hey, this is my answer. Because recently, every time I've answered a question, it's gone a little longer than expected. So this time we just had whole show on that segment, and whatever else is going around, that with NCAA wrestling. But nonetheless, that is this week's weigh-in and takedown Thursday. So if we jump right into it, I'm going to jump right into this. First off and foremost, there's been a lot of transfers going around in wrestling. We know that Oklahoma State University was able to still keep one in Stillwater. I remember seeing that. So that was a good thing going for them. They were able to keep Ignacio Villasino. So they were able to keep Ignacio. And he's a top recruit for the class 27, which is really good. Has nothing to do with this season, but still really good for Stillwater. You're getting some of the good ones. There's some rumors that Iowa was picking up another transfer to, and if those turn to be true, that's great. Who exactly? I'm not exactly sure because I saw that a little while ago, but nonetheless, they did say something about that Iowa picking up 2 transfers. So I'll see if I can find something that. But to answer, why we're today's epi of Takedown Thursdays, does Jiu-Jitsu have something to do with wrestling? And I'm gonna tell you, the short answer is yeah. Many might not believe that answer, but yes, because the movement that Jiu-Jitsu creates is movement that you can use. I'm not talking about the moves, because what you're going to learn in Jiu-Jitsu is not all going to be beneficial to wrestling, but the movement is what I'm talking about. The scramble ability of Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling is very similar. So I know that it was asked, does judo? And yeah, it does. Sometimes in throws, absolutely, it works hand in hand with freestyle when it comes to the throws and stuff like that. Yeah. But in terms of, does it have a direct benefit? In some cases, yes, not all. I say that because not in every case it happens. And I think, how this question came about is, I kind of felt like they were wanting to know, the questioner should, and this is a big question. And I don't feel, and many will say, well, am I qualified to answer it? I don't care if you think I am or not. I'm going to answer it regardless. Should wrestlers be taking judo? And the short answer is, if you're doing it at almost a older or younger age, the answer is yes. Now, should they be doing it? I know everybody, the long battle is, it's wrestling and football. Does that change the difference between wrestling and football? No. It's always first and foremost wrestling and football. But in terms of somebody who might not want to play that football, for whatever the reason may be, I won't get into all of that. They may not want to play football. And if that's the case, they don't want to play football. Yeah, you'll get a little bit of an ability. Spencer Lee, his mom was around judo as it was around jiu-jitsu. So you talk about, he had some jiu-jitsu in him. Some guys when I was in high school had some jiu-jitsu in them. Some guys I knew, either they were on my club team or they were or on the club team, or they few of them, one or more, went to my high school. So you talk about John Posnanski had a little jiu-jitsu in him. He was a jiu-jitsu, another jiu-jitsu. So you talk about, I'm pretty sure there's quite a few of them where you look at them and you say, hey, they got some jiu-jitsu through them. And I'm not saying jiu-jitsu is to be bigger than, like people say, football makes good wrestlers. No, jiu-jitsu is a substitution if you don't want to play football. It's another competitive level, but it creates that scramble ability that is very rooted in wrestling. Like, when you look at some good scramblers, some good college wrestling scramblers, off the top of my head, I don't have a list of the best scramblers. I mean, that's probably a whole episode in itself. But we all know Roman Bravo Young can scramble. We all know Sammy Alvarez can scramble. So you bring up those two names and you knew, okay, those guys can scramble. I'm not saying those were jiu-jitsu guys at this time is unknown. But what I'm saying is there some similarities here between some high-level wrestlers and jiu-jitsu? Right now, yes, it's looking like it. Yeah, it's looking like jiu-jitsu has something to do with it, in terms of it. But does it have everything to do with it? Not so much. But as enough to say, should somebody take it along with wrestling? I would always say to get your aggression would be football. But I would definitely say if you're going to take a little bit of jiu-jitsu, yeah, you can learn a thing or two, more than a thing or two from that. Yeah. I don't think you have to keep taking it because we know there's some guys that were taking jiu-jitsu. There are a lot of guys that were college wrestlers that were Division I that, have a little jiu-jitsu in them. Not all of them continued it because you don't have to continue taking the jiu-jitsu. There's an aspect of something once you receive what you need. It's like, okay, I'll break it down for some of the. I know there's a few coaches that watch us because a couple of those questions have come from, a few different of that nature, of that kind of nature. How I felt on certain issues. I'm gonna break it down for you this way. Think of it like this. If Jordan Burroughs, let's say we're in a week in August, we're in last week of August. Or we could say last week of July for most. Jordan Burroughs holds a clinic on a Monday, and then Jordan Burroughs holds a clinic on a Tuesday, different location, whatever the case may be. Would you then go to both clinics? The short answer coming from some of your parents would say, yeah, he might not show the same thing, but okay, let's say here, maybe he does. It's a defensive clinic and he shows defensive clinic twice. You've already learned what the defense is here. You kind of don't want to go twice. And I get why most would say, yeah, he could show something different. It's beneficial. In that case, yes, 100%. But, in other words, if you see something once, would you want to go see it again? Would you want to? So it's kind of like, hey, once you've felt like jiu-jitsu has helped you wrestle a little better, are you still going to do it? Most cases that I've seen, they don't continue it. They have not. They have not really continued that jiu-jitsu, which is fairly interesting. In most cases that I know of, I don't think any of them have continued it actually, at all. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like, hey, so what, where are we at on that? And it's kind of like most cases they don't continue it, but they've learned, some aspect of it, I think. And I think it has helped more others than say Spencer Lee, but I think in terms of it, yeah, I think it plays a little aspect that it can kind of help quite a little bit because you need, first and foremost, for jiu-jitsu, you need wrestling. You need wrestling for jiu-jitsu. And everybody knows that. And that's kind of why it kind of helps because it provides you another way to wrestle. It's a little different aspect and for that, but it kind of helps very well with, I think it helps with the movement, as far as what I've been able to gather after getting that question is, I feel like it helps with the movement. And I think that's a good way to go on about it. And does it make, and is there a downside to it? No, because, at the end of the day, if let's say your kid or whatever, your wrestler, if you're the coach, the parent, whatever your role may be, at the end of the day, they can always, what happens with most Division I, because we're going to give them benefit of doubt here and say they're going to go D1. Um, you know, most Division One wrestlers end up going to the UFC, where then they're going to use that jiu-jitsu. So it's in no situation is it a lose-lose if they're going on that path. Only time is if they're playing football, they're doing the jiu-jitsu, and they go to the NFL. At that point, the jiu-jitsu isn't really going to help you. But even then, still, it's going to create a mental patience that'll happen, because I obviously in jiu-jitsu, when you don't get what your move the first time, you wait, you seek for it. And if many of you don't understand, I mean, I would say, look at a few videos from Grappler's Quest, which is a huge jiu-jitsu no-gi jiu-jitsu event, that, as far as I know, whether it's still around or isn't is unknown at the time, but more than less, Grappler's Quest, you'll see like some good stuff has gone down there at Grappler's Quest. Like, you've had Frank Mir down at Grappler's Quest. You've had some good Grappler's Quest tournaments where there are a lot of good guys down there that have done such great things at Grappler's Quest. And you talk about that jiu-jitsu down there, and it creates the mental patience, and you'll understand what I'm saying. If you have not seen a few jiu-jitsus, look at a few clips of jiu-jitsu. I'm not telling you to fully indulge and saying I want to do jiu-jitsu. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying look at a few clips. The mental patience you have to have, and it's true. It's mental patience in wrestling as well. You don't get your first move. You got to be very patient and work your second one. That's what I say. That's another thing that I'm going to touch here is this. If you don't get move A, you got to always have a B. I used to wrestle like that. I was a two-step. I used to call it two-step wrestling. That was my word for it. I know that's not, people call it chain wrestling. But I think that's the official term for it. But I always used to look at it as two-step. Two-step because, okay, when I hit my first move, if that goes and, I can't get him over or whatever, that's okay. And if I can't get points and the points aren't moving, I don't waste the time. I go to step 2. I turn them a totally different way. I get the points from that. And then after that, I go back to step 1. Now, I know you used to be able to get away with two-step wrestling, two-step wrestling, because chain wrestling is kind of displaying chain wrestling. If you don't know, if the term is one move after another, chain wrestling, continuing one move after another. So basically, if you stop his first move and he's on bottom and you break him down, well, that's breaking him down and then grabbing his wrist. You're chain wrestling. You're doing things in a chain. I think by that analogy, most of you could have got it. Why you can't get away with what I used to do much anymore is because when you run your tilts, generally now in most forms of wrestling, they make you release the hands. They make you fully let go of all his hands to get your points. And then, when I was coming up, when I was wrestling, we used to get slick. And I'm going to tell you, because you can't do it anymore. And that's why I'm going to tell you. We used to kind of take the knee. And if we took his wrist, we'd take both our hands off and we'd take the knee to block the wrist. We would take the knee to block the wrist. Simply so that we could continue. We take knee, block the wrist, so we could then get our turn and say, hey, we let go of them, back points. It worked for, like, I want to say the first season they came out with that rule, and then they refined that if you're using the knee to block the wrist, you don't get your points. So you fully have to let go of all his hands, which got rid of really my two-step wrestling. Not really the ability, because I just kind of said, all right, I'll work towards the second one. But even then, I kept that two-step ability. If the first one doesn't get the turn, work immediately towards the second one. And, there's a mental patience in that, because you got to really try the first one. If it doesn't work, if you're in a short match situation, and what I mean by that is you need the points, you're that match, you're that tying match where you need to get 6 or you need to get 5 to line up the next guy to possibly pin to win. If you need the points, move on to the second step and just keep going. You got to move on and try to get them as quick as you can. Just keep working every turn, because more than likely, bottom guy, more than likely, if you're working 2-3 turns, bottom guy's going to get hit with stalling. So if you're working them turns, he's going to get hit with stalling, And in most cases, I say most cases because, it's up to the referee's discretion, that stalling. So but if you're turning them and you keep running turns, only so long before they're going to look and say, hey, that's stalling. So that's one of the big things that I say is that it comes in is that mental patience. A lot of it, when you look at jiu-jitsu, that no gi, the best talk is, gi can help too. When you have the gi for jiu-jitsu, because really I say all forms, but when you look at no gi is that real good scrambling. That'll give you that scrambling because there ain't nothing you could really, and even with gi you can get good scrambling. All forms get good scrambling. I just have felt that it's kind of more movement with no gi, but amidst that, and a lot of this comes from, as you all know on this pod, we went to Men of War. So if that was not talked about, we went to Men of War, which is a grappling event. So there is some fact behind this, because we were at Men of War, and we were generally we learned a lot at Men of War, and I'm surprised I didn't talk about this before getting the question, but it was asked of me, and I kind of felt to just like touch that. Men of War is a grappling promotion. Wonderful event. If we're gonna go across that, wonderful event. We went out to Men of War and absolutely loved it, and that gave us some that gave us some information in tune to this grappling. That gave us insight, was the word I'm looking for. It gave us some insight on this grappling. But this no gi, that's what when we went at Men of War, that's what it was. It was no gi. When you look at that no gi and that scramble, there's a mental patience, because you're looking for your ankle, and you gotta wait. Gotta wait for that angle. You gotta wait for your move kind of a little bit while you're kind of moving, and that's where it says the mental patience. So even if you're not, you say, well, I'm a football guy. How can that help me in football? I'm a football basketball player. I don't really do that grappling. I don't really do wrestling. I kind of feel, well, if you're playing basketball, you already got the patience. I'm going to be honest with you. You got it. You got it right there, because you got to be patient on your shot. So you're already taking a good step by doing that. Now, if you're a guy that does not, you play football, you're not really doing any of that, and you're not doing anything, I would definitely say, yeah, get into wrestling. Get into wrestling. Get into wrestling, because that mental patience. And I understand they're not going to understand, what does that have to do with everything? Well, it has a lot to do with everything. If you're a cornerback, or a defensive back, a DB, as they call them, the DB, and you're in coverage, you got to be patient. You got to sit there. You're waiting for your guy that you're covering to get the ball, but you're patient, because you look at. Okay, let's talk about Richard Sherman real quick. You look at Richard Sherman. How patient was Richard Sherman? That's why he got so many interceptions, because he was patient. He sat there and he didn't jump the gun. He didn't go quick. He waited for the right time. That's because you're patient. That the mental patience, why I say mental is because in your mind, if you're saying, I got to be patient, it's going to come. It's going to come. Just wait. That's the thing that you kind of say, okay, and I'll give you an even better one. Malcolm Butler, Seattle Seahawks 1 yard line. If you haven't seen the play, here we go. Stop the video. Go watch that play. Even if you're not a football fan, go watch that play, because it'll help you understand it. But if you're really not, I'll explain it to you. Seattle Seahawks need a touchdown. They're playing the Patriots in Super Bowl. For everybody else that knows this is for everybody who doesn't. So, playing thing. Pretty much everybody's seen the play. If you haven't, whatever. So, 1 yard line. Seahawks need a touchdown. You got Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. Pete Carroll, they call a pass play. So when they call that pass play, they think to throw to their receiver on Russell Wilson's right side, the closest receiver, but Malcolm Butler intercepts it. And there was a whole video. If you haven't, seeing that, there is a whole video on the Patriots saying, hey, we knew they were going to do this. We trained all week with Malcolm Butler on this. And Malcolm Butler, he could have got there too early and missed it, but he got there just right because he was patient. So we talk about, the patience you can get from some sports, what you're able to do and learn it, and learn that stuff. It's hand to hand with football and even wrestling and football. Many will say I'm looking at this all wrong with wrestling and football, but you got to be patient in wrestling because if you're not patient, you get beat. And I know a lot of people might not understand this, but look at some of the guys that beat Spencer Lee. We're talking about Matt Ramos. We're talking about Sebastian Rivera, Seabass. We're talking about Nick Piccinini. That was at Okie State for the duel. And I'm sure there's many more, but not much that will go along with my patience here. Nick Piccinini was patient. Got his cradle, lined it up. Very patient, Nick Piccinini. Had he jumped the gun, he would have got nothing. And that's what I'm telling you. Nick Piccinini is very patient. And I say that because you gotta. And he was very patient. Got turned. Matt Ramos wrestled a great match. He knew that what he wanted to get was going to be there. He was very patient. When he saw it, he took it. He didn't jump the gun. He didn't go too quick and lose it. He was patiently got the turn, lined it up, cinched him up, got it tight. That's it. And Sebastian Rivera beat him multiple times. I'm pretty sure there were multiple times that Seabass got to at Spencer Lee. I know one was Big Tens, and I believe one of them. I'm gonna look this up, but I'll look that second one up. But I know one was Big Tens, and Sebastian Rivera was patient. Match went to overtime. He's very patient, very patient. We talk about some of those are some of your best wrestlers. They wait for the right time to do something, the right time to, And Spencer Lee is very patient too, and I'm gonna tell you why Spencer Lee is patient. Spencer Lee is patient because I'm gonna tell you why Spencer Lee is patient. Because there are times that people have scored a takedown on him, and he has it has unfazed him. Gave up two takedowns, still won the match. And that's not because, of anything else. I mean, that's not because of, things like, hey, the other guy was lacking. No, the other guy wasn't lacking. Spencer was patient. And he was able to, stay calm in those situations. And that's what you talk about. The wrestlers that implode in their head. And when I say implode, I mean where they go, okay, now I've been taken out. Oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? The wrestler that knows what to do in the situation, that the minute they're taken down, they're like, okay, I have to do this. Those are the wrestlers that you say, wow, he didn't keep him down long, because they already know. They're already on to the next step. They're already thinking the way they're supposed to. And that's something that that is really well for a wrestler. And that's something that, goes with that jiu-jitsu. That minute you get the takedown, okay, what submission are you working? And I say that because, a lot of no-gi, that's kind of the way you win, is getting that submission. So that's something where it's kind of like, all right, what submission are you working? So that's what I mean when I say that's what I mean when I say that's what I mean when I say that that hand to hand, it so most of what so so many have. That's what I've been able to learn, is that so many that have done that jiu-jitsu have done well, and there are some that have not taken jiu-jitsu, and that's what happened. So to answer to answer your question on this grappler's quest, I'm about to answer it now for you. Um, in other words, I'm gonna get you a better answer than what I found, but nonetheless, like I said, this jiu-jitsu does go a little bit with wrestling, a little bit, and not the obvious reasons which most would think is to learn the scrambling. It's to learn it brings the same thing that most wrestlers that every wrestler needs. You got to be patient when you work your stuff. When you're working your stuff, don't always be so quick, because when you're quick, you make a mistake. And I say this, how many times have we seen a heavyweight get ready to pin another heavyweight and they go too quickly and they get rolled over and pin themselves? That's one of the things I'm saying. So you got to be very, very patient. And I think patient competing, I say patient competing because if it's jiu-jitsu, competing wrestling, jiu-jitsu, whatever you may be competing in, most sports you got to be very patient with what you're doing. And if it doesn't work the first time, you got to take your time, try a second. In the grappling game. So I had to, it's great when you run podcasts, you have good contacts where you can ask certain questions. So to answer your question, yeah, Grappler's Quest is still around. But nonetheless, they had some pretty good matchups that went over the years. And I will try to see if I can find those good reasons that happened over the years of what happened. So let me see if I can find you some of those good grappler. What I'm talking about, so I could let you know what I mean. Yeah, it was Frank Mir and Roy Nelson. I think is the yeah Frank Mir, Roy Nelson was a good one to look at. I mean, I feel like it's got some good scramble enough that that you'll understand what I'm talking about in terms of the scrambling. There's a couple times Frank Mir was at Grappler's Quest, and did very well. There's a lot of that good stuff that looks, you know, that's very well. But Grappler's Quest is good. It's submission only the way to win. Um, so that's what I talk about is some of that scrambling that is provided between all of that is really well. So, that's what I talk about when I say all of that. But nonetheless, we're in the end of the epi again, and I really did think that was just something I had to address. At the end of the day, I'm going to say the same thing I tell you. I'm not a I'm not a professional in any way, shape, or form providing any mental advice or aspect. So you can ask me the questions. I will give you what I think. But at the end of the day, everything I say is due to my opinion unless I break it down from where I more than likely will be reading something direct from a situation, or I will provide you, conclusive things that might lead you to believe what I believe. But at the end of the day, mine is a belief. You can always form your own opinions. If some say that's not true with wrestling and jiu-jitsu, I mean, and jiu-jitsu, that is that is that is your that is your choice, but I'm here to answer the questions that are asked of me. And when it comes to that, when it's asked of that, I just answer the questions. And I'm just saying that is the frontal hold of, most of the time of my belief. I can only provide you my opinion. My opinion of something, our opinion, it's an opinion. In no way, shape, or form are you to draft the same conclusions without then Googling and figuring out what's going on, depending on what's what, on your own. But I will sure give you the clearest information and the best information to my knowledge. Everybody's not perfect. I understand that. But we try to, at all times, if we don't have an answer, we tell you, hey, you know, if it's something we don't want to specifically get into detail about, we tell you to Google it. If it's something that we sit here and say, hey, we don't have an answer, we'll, like you guys see, there are times that, you see I'm quiet. That's because I Google certain stuff to make sure I get it right for you guys. I get it right so that you guys can have the right answer so that when you leave these episodes, you've now gotten every answer you want, and that's what I do. And there are times when I do provide my opinion. And when I do that, like this episode, do I feel about jiu-jitsu and wrestling? Yeah. But there are times where I will bring up a situation and say I feel one thing went versus the other. That is an opinion. I'll tell you that is an opinion. I will tell you as a disclaimer in those videos, you are not to form your opinions off of mine unless you know truly what's going on in the situation and how you feel when you get all the evidence and details. And that is because I'm not here to persuade you one way or another. I'm just here to provide you my opinion so that can hopefully provide you some clarity. I'm here to provide clarity. I'm not here to go and, tell somebody you got to like this, you got to like that versus, you got to do this. No, I'm here to provide clarity and a suggestion. Everything I do is more of a suggestion, but nonetheless, this is answering a question, versus the normal regular episode of what's going around world wrestling and wrestling. I kind of felt like this is a whole epi in itself, and that's kind of why I chose to talk about should wrestlers be taking jiu-jitsu? Does wrestling and jiu-jitsu go hand in hand? And it was a question asked, and when the questions are asked, like I said, I'm trying to get better at when you guys ask me questions, no matter where the question may be. I'm trying to get better to make sure that those are answered on podcast as timely as I can. If not, like these questions, some of them come after I've already filmed, and I answer them the next week. I try to make sure I answer them. I try. If I don't have an answer, I will get one. I have more than enough contacts through, we went to Men of War, we met grappling guys. I got more than enough contacts here to, if I don't have an answer, I can sure get somebody who might have more clarity with an answer and then provide it to you guys. That is the great part about when you're podcasting, you get to know people, you grow contacts, even wrestling wise, I got them all. So it's just the best thing here is, um, I love the questions. Continue with the questions. You can reach out to us on email, Instagram. We have a Twitter, but we're barely ever on it. So I don't always suggest Twitter, but or X as they call it. We have a lot of social media. We got Instagram. We got a lot of stuff, but more or less, reach out, email, reach out, YouTube, any platform we got. We answer questions. And we don't get a lot of questions, but we get a few, but we answer questions. And I feel like, I don't know if all podcasts really do this, but we will prioritize you, the viewer, and your questions and try to, like now we centered a whole episode around one question. So that can happen. there will be times we'll be able to do that and provide questions. And if we don't have the answer and the contact doesn't answer, we will get you a guest that will give us that answer. So we'll try to get you a guest that will give us that answer. I know that doesn't sound so easy because we haven't had a lot of guests on here this year, at least, because we've been focusing on quality content from our episodes. But best believe, either way, we're going to get you the answer. So, with that being said, this is the Weigh-In Podcast by Benoit Chestnut and normally Sebastian Romero. But he will return at some point. And like, comment, subscribe, and share, And as always, keep it up to questions. Because we will keep answering them and keep them going. Thank you to fans and the people who watch. If you watch and you're not subscribed, you got to subscribe. You got to get subscribed. What are you doing? Get subscribed. There's videos posted twice a week. You want to get that notification bell on so you can know when the next one comes up and not have to keep checking the channel. You want that notification bell so as soon as it drops, you can watch it right away. So please subscribe. Go ahead and subscribe. But this is the weigh-in. Weighing out.